Did you see what Carvajal did on the bench the other day in the match against Betis about Trent Alexander-Arnold? It's more than obvious. Did you see it? Well, let's analyze it. And if you haven't seen it, well, look, you're going to see it now. How are you? Welcome. Happy Tuesday. We'll be back later in a video with Negreira related topics and tell them that here, well, anyway, I think some of you already know about that. Are you getting a little tired of all the information about the club or the team? I mean, it doesn't excite you at all. Wow. Unless, hey, tomorrow we find out the name of the new coach. Let's talk about who it could be or something exciting, a new signing or something. The truth is, things that are happening to us now or things that happen in the locker room and so on, I get that you don't really care anymore because what's left is to experience it. What's left is to live it. A match at Camp Nou, seeing how Barca wins another league and so on. I understand all of you. Also understand that around here, it's a mix of good and bad. And we're really persistent with the refereeing issue, with what's happening in Italy and the parallels with Spain, with the Negreira case that we keep bringing up, as it should be, because that flame can't be extinguished. We also need to discuss what's happening within the team. And the atmosphere in the locker room, well, it's not good. It's not good at all. Things that were being said, as I mentioned in the video the other day, kind of standing up for myself. Also, what some of us did when they fired Xavi Alonso, even before they fired him, there were things here that weren't going well. But not just between players and coaches, but also with the higher ups, right? With the upper management. Because it wasn't normal for the chain of command and hierarchies not to be respected and all that. And when that happens in a team, well, it tends toward dysfunction. We're in this phase, and I love what Colin says about the karmic cycle. We're in the phase, what does he call it? Asador, in the Asador phase. A happy phase with a happy coach, right? Anyway, well, Ancelotti, just so we're clear, naturally with all his good qualities. There's a reason for calling it that, and it's because he manages to bring the locker room together. Things work well and all that, but then everything starts to deteriorate until it reaches the Asador phase, which is when you've already lost the locker room, no matter which coach comes in, unless a strong man steps in. And that's another phase. Well, nobody listens to him. Everyone just does their own thing and so on. And unfortunately, that's the phase we're in. And then comes the strongman phase, right? Mourinho in his day, Capello in his day, and so on, which might be what the club needs now. I think the karmic cycle thing is really good. And I also think that in a video, Collins started listing all the Real Madrid coaches since Leo Benjaker, and that's how it's been. It's amazing. That's how it's been, huh? That pattern is always repeated. Well, this thing with Carvajal yesterday, well, not yesterday, on Friday, that came out yesterday on El Dia Después on Movistar Plus was the following. Look, it's the same. We're in the same situation. Even if they're independent cameras right on the field and all that, there are things you just can't show. Because if it gets to the league, they'll come down on you and mess things up for you, right? But basically, that's what it was about.
Right after that, Trent isn't going to sprint back to follow Betis' counterattack either.
Well, there you can see how Trent Alexander-Arnold, you see him in the small frame, and I have to pause it. You can see how well he's just walking back. This is going to be one of the things we'll talk about in this video. The concept of walking on the pitch for elite players in elite teams that want to win things, right? And with the coaches that come in, how do they understand that? How do they understand that? Well, Trent is a footballer who, here it's clear that there's a pattern as well, both among the fans and the professionals. You won't hear anyone say, out of all the pundits, out of all the people who know about football, that Trent is a bad footballer, because he isn't. He has an incredible right foot, a wand of a right foot. But everyone, practically everyone, including his national team manager, Tuchel, who isn't calling him up. Trent Alexander-Arnold is going to miss the World Cup. He wasn't included in this training camp of 35 players. There must be a reason, damn it, there must be a reason. Many of us agree that he's a guy who defensively, well, he's not good defensively, but if at least he would run. But here there are two things, two sides to it. One, he doesn't give physically everything he should, because I insist, for me, he's also or he could be a physical beast. Also, it's the attitude he brings to the game. One thing sometimes leads to another. The attitude he plays with isn't right. It's not right at all. And I know that this bothers a lot of Real Madrid fans. It's not going to bother the guy whose spot he's taking. But look, that's another thing, having that attitude inside the locker room. I'm not going to praise it, not at all, even though I can understand Carvajal and any footballer who thinks they're better or can perform better than the one taking their spot. Well, that's right. That's how the video continued. Well, and then with someone like Carvajal here, wait, because on top of that, to make matters worse, there's some music here. Hold on. And now this is what Carvajal is going to do. And I'm going to remove the music and the guy's narration so that, well, I can explain it myself. After all, it's easy to understand. He says something here. I can't read his lips. It's odd these people didn't read it. He covers his mouth a bit and seems to be talking to someone. And he asks him about someone, okay? And I think his gesture, he points and goes bam, 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 means he's walking, right? The sign is the gesture showing that he's walking. He looks at him and laughs. It's pretty clear. Now then, it definitely matches this moment because I know how those from Plus are. Yeah, the guys from Plus and anyone who does these kinds of reports, is that what he's referring to? Exactly this moment. We think so. Yes, we think so. But damn, let's see now the gesture of who is walking there, I think it's pretty clear. Is he referring to Trent? He could also be referring to Mbappe because Mbappe is also walking back. Be careful with that, huh? Careful. I think it's really about Trent Alexander-Arnold. I'll trust the good faith of the person making these reports since I did them myself back in my day. On American television, Spanish television, and on La Sexta and so on, which are player tracking segments. And long before that, before I was on Spanish television, when I worked at a local TV station in Madrid called Localia. I believe it was all over Spain with the Prisa group, and we used to do reports like these, which I had been doing since 2002. So I know how things work here, and I understand that those who are there to do this have watched the whole match and are aware of what was actually happening. Some say don't criticize Carvajal for what he's doing, claiming this isn't from a healthy locker room. They're right, it's not. The locker room is already completely tainted. I'll mention something else in this report, though I won't show it all, but you could see Carvajal cheering and getting involved from the start. Because there are others who just don't care whether you score a goal or concede one, they have the same expression. However, Carvajal doesn't. Not just in this match, but many times as a substitute, like the other day against Girona when we got screwed and they made Mbappe bleed. I don't know. Carvajal loses it because the league was slipping away from us yet again. And well, so I see him involved. I mean, within all the bad things, even if he's not playing, he's a true Madrid fan and wants Madrid to win. But here, several things get mixed together. He believes he's in better form than Trent and should start over him because he understands it. Because besides, Carvajal is a born competitor and his only last chance to go to a World Cup with a national team with a chance to win it or at least be up there is slipping away from him. They have a few chances to win it. Not all the teams that go to the World Cup do, of course, but they have a few. I say this because someone in the comments will start going on about Spain. I'm not saying anything, but it's clear that France, England, Spain, Germany, and Argentina are among the favorites, and that's why Carvajal is upset. But come on, given his situation, what happens is that, watch out, he hasn't publicly disrespected his coach, nor has he snubbed him in public. Something that a footballer has already done this season. And if it was Vinicius, even if someone watching the video clicks away or gives me a dislike, okay, well, Vinicius did this, okay? Or, for example, he doesn't completely ignore his coaches like Mbappe has done with the 3 coaches he's already had at Real Madrid who tell him, hey, run or defend, press, and so on, and he doesn't do it. They said that the one who was happiest with Mbappe was Xavi Alonso. And by the way, they also say that Mbappe was happy too. They're reporting from France that he was very happy with Xavi and that he is against the club because of the decisions that were made at the time and so on, which I agree with. I agree with Mbappe if that's the case. But of course, then there are many things he's doing on the field that I don't agree with. And we've already talked about them on this channel. This thing about walking is something that a candidate to coach Real Madrid, Jurgen Klopp, has spoken about. This video has been made about the German coach who might be in talks with Liverpool. They could already be talking to him. They say that Anas Lagari is determined to convince him. although I think from the start. Neither Florentino likes Klopp, nor does Klopp like Florentino or Real Madrid or the way Madrid is managed and run. Because recently, when they fired Xavi, he strongly criticized what Madrid had done with Xavi Alonso. But they say that Anas Lagari is trying by all means to convince him, and you already know the influence this man apparently has within Real Madrid and Florentino's opinion. This is what Klopp said as Liverpool's coach about Real Madrid. I mean, the players have to run, the forwards or the great players have to run in modern football.
If you're not Leo Messi, you have to defend. He says,
if you're not Leo Messi, you have to defend the...
Wait until he has the ball, give it to him, and now do whatever you want. Everyone else has to defend.
He says everyone else has to defend, everyone who isn't Leo Messi. In this case, he used Leo Messi as an example, but I would certainly say, I would say that neither Messi nor Cristiano, two players who have defined an era with all the asterisks that Messi has because of Barca and because of who he is. But anyway, you get me. Messi and Cristiano have defined an era between the two of them, like Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, players who no one could dethrone. No one could take it away from them because they are very special and different footballers. The thing is, of course, you can put Mbappe in that category. Maybe in terms of technical quality, yes, but then you also need football IQ and knowing what the team needs at every moment. And Mbappe has shown that he doesn't have it. Sorry, but he has no idea. We're seeing it in all those images, right? And in that sense, Mbappe, if you saw, for example, when he drops back to receive and so on, assists, then he always has the unmarked man. He's a player who's a 10 in every sense and makes the team move, even though you might see him just walking and so on. But you say, damn, the guy is just so good and solves so many problems for me that, look, man, it's not about walking. That's for geniuses. But hey, I forgive him. It's not that Mbappe, except for his ability to score goals and for dribbling, both when standing still and in motion, he's very good, and that's more than proven. But in many situations, as we've already seen in the videos, he either slows down the game with the ball or without the ball. He doesn't attack the spaces because he wants to play in that relaxed comfort zone, which collectively is not good for the team. Then you don't leave. Okay? He'll have to run, and above all, he'll have to run to learn that he has to do all of that well, and that all of that will benefit the team. Because what both Cristiano and Messi did, although I think Cristiano ran a little more, but Cristiano was allowed to do it. Let's say when he moved from playing on the wing to being a center forward, maybe he didn't press as much. Maybe even though we've seen him press, maybe he didn't run as much. But the thing is, they knew what the team needed. Cristiano would go into space. Cristiano positioned himself like no one else for headers from set pieces, whether it was corners, free kicks, or when someone was coming down the wing. Cristiano instinctively knows when to go near post, far post, or fake one way and go another, things you can't teach on paper. That was for Cristiano's game. Messi's game was about receiving the ball in his comfort zone, but then he was absolutely decisive in a million assists he's given throughout his career. When he wasn't shooting from distance, when he wasn't using 1-2s to position himself better than anyone else to then score the goal, like that partnership he had with Jordi Alba and so on, I insist, with all the asterisks that Barca has and so on. And then you put in the comments that I think I know everything, but we've also seen Messi do all of that. Well, that's something Mbappe doesn't have. And Vinicius doesn't have it either. I mean, they're two players who might think they're better than they really are, and they need to run, and they need to give 100% with and without the ball, and especially without the ball. Because look, the best version of Vinicius, for example, we've seen it when he started from a place of humility, like, damn, they're laughing at me, I'm a meme, whatever, I'm going to prove them wrong. When Vinicius didn't think he was such a star like he does now. Look, also Mbappe, Vinicius could have made the biggest upgrade in football history for me. For some time now, well, no. What is that due to? What does that coincide with? With his position in stardom, which he earned through his own hard work, but once he got up there, he's not handling it in the best way. That's what I think. Here's what Klopp thinks about everyone needing to run. Let's see if he comes to Madrid and says the same with these two and the rest, or if Valverde says, no, I don't want to play at right back, or Bellingham pushes back. I want to play further up because Klopp is going to be one of those who tells them, no, you do what I tell you. And let's see if they listen to him. And let's see if the president, if Florentino tells them, you have to listen to the coach, because that's what I want to see. Therefore, I would love for Klopp to come to Madrid. That problem could happen. Scaloni, look at what Scaloni thinks in this interview with Valdano. It reminds me a lot of what happened with Ancelotti, and that's probably why Real Madrid has taken an interest in him. Pay attention to what he says here to Valdano.
What I take from Russia is an image that football was moving towards transitions, putting in fast players, but I wanted my team to be like that. But I said, but if the typical Argentine player or the best Argentines aren't like that, I realized this even before the Copa America started, but well, I said, let's give it a try for a few matches.
That's interesting.
Yes, it's very interesting.
Interesting because it's also very difficult to challenge the trend. Yes.
The good thing about being on a national team is you can pick the best players. Unlike a club where you work with what's available, we realized the top players played differently. In our first two games against Guatemala and Colombia, the team played more vertically, using skilled players. We asked the players to do something different. But we said to Don Pablo and El Raton, but look, Lo Celso plays well, De Paul plays well, Paredes plays well, Palacios plays well, Messi plays well. Playing well means they connect, that they combine with each other. And if we ask for speed or passes of 30 to 40 meters, I don't think that's related. So sometimes we thought, well, if Di Maria played on one side, you couldn't play someone else on the other side because we needed to bring a lot of players together.
For what I have to put in, you already know what I have to do, right? Anyway, so they don't bother me. All right, let's continue for a moment. Eva.
Passes so things work out. We always told him and showed him the footage that when we put together 10 passes, it was a goal-scoring situation. But always, Jorge, it was incredibly real. If you just say it without showing proof, people think you're lying. But whenever we showed him the footage, he'd point out, see, over 10 passes, a goal chance or an actual goal.
We didn't rush, let's say, more than 10 passes. But there wasn't any pointless passing with the ball. There wasn't any messing around.
With the ball,
The team.
he distracted.
And found the opportunity.
We're always considering our play and opponents, planning attacks. The team understood this, and so did the coaching staff. And it's not about taking credit. On the contrary, I'd even say I changed because I don't mind saying it. I was watching an interview with Ancelotti the other day, a year ago or less, and I loved it because the guy said the players got together and told us they felt more comfortable this way. If they say this and I see it's true, why wouldn't I change? I don't suggest something just because it's better for me as a coach. If it's not better for the team, that's key.
Well, there are several things here. Look, Ancelotti understands that the coach has to adapt to what's available, which was also something Xavi Alonso supported, by the way. But anyway, Ancelotti is a master at this. The team, coach, and technical staff must adapt to what's available, although él en una selección, he had options to choose from, he had more to choose from. Sorry, but did he realize that the Argentine player was the kind of player suited to transition play, more of a passer? Well, what happened with Spain under Luis Aragonés in 2008, he said, what kind of soccer are we playing? What these players are really good at is the famous tiki-taka. And it worked out so well for them. And Del Bosque, well, he took over from there and all that. They're the kind of coaches who know how to adapt. But anyway, what allowed Messi not to run, by the way, to just walk? But is he going to allow, for example, going back to what we said before about Klopp, that players like Mbappe can afford that luxury? When he's just walking, sure, he can still score goals, but if it makes the team worse collectively, then no. He'll ask him to run and request other things. The question remains, will they listen to him? His approach seems less authoritarian than Klopp's. If we go back to the karmic cycle again, maybe it's not better. Maybe right now Klopp might be a better fit right now than Scaloni. I think right now we need a Judillo, but they say Klopp needs a year for the team to start working, a year at Madrid. Nobody gets that because we're coming off 2 seasons without any trophies. Man, of course, the summer we're facing is really complicated. And, well, also, Scaloni obviously had a period with the Argentine national team. He won the Copa America first. It's much easier for me to win a Copa America than a World Cup. But, well, he and Pochettino seem like coaches who can fit better into the squad, but maybe what the squad is asking for is a coach for this Asador phase. This one where they don't care about anything anymore and the locker room is broken, needs the German. But I'll go back to the first point. He has to get there, put his balls on the table, and say things as they are. And the president has to support him. And that's not so easy, you think. Give it a like if you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to the channel, comment, share, and have a great Tuesday. Bye.